First of all, thank you all so much for coming this afternoon. It's such a treat to be here. And also, we're so lucky to have David here. You're so busy at the moment as the coordinator for the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition. So thank you, David. It's a massive treat.
It's a pleasure, really.
Now, we're going to start off by David's going to tell us a little story about love.
Well, this is, we lived for 20 years in the Chelsea Hotel, and opposite the Chelsea Hotel in New York, there was a YMCA gym, which I reluctantly went into from time to time. And one morning I went into it, and a receptionist I hadn't seen for a long time, quite a while, was there, and she I remembered her name, and I said, I haven't seen you for a long time. She said, no, I fell in love and got my heart broken. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. So I went up, but anyway, I went up to the changing room, and I heard this conversation between the banks of lockers behind me, and one man said to the other, he said, so how are you getting on with her? And the other guy said, I'm so in love with her. He said, I get out of the subway in the evening and I run home to get her. And the first guy says, is she your first dog?
I love that story so much. And I think it just epitomizes the real love that we all have for our dogs. I think it just sums it up, doesn't it? It's wonderful. Now, we're talking about the exhibition of people and their dogs drawn together. And it all came about, really, it started off with a dog called Honey. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, Honey wasn't in it at the beginning. Alan Cumming was in a cabaret on Broadway, and I'd met him briefly through Anna Friel actually introduced it, and and I said to Anna, I'd love to do a drawing of Alan, and she said, oh, I'll ask him, you know. And he said yes, but nothing happened for a while, and then we bumped into each other, and he started coming to sit with me. He didn't have a dog, but the second time he came, he said, I hope you don't mind, I'm bringing this, I've just got this, somebody's given it to me, a rescue dog called Honey, and she was gorgeous, and actually my parents had a German Shepherd called Honey, funnily, and the colouring was very similar. Anyway, she became a integral part of the whole drawing and of thing. It started with that, really.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because actually it came about through doing a portrait of Alan and then realising that actually there's so much more to learn about somebody through their relationship with their dog.
It's another component. It is a relationship, as you say. It's like a conversation. It can be very humorous.
So do you think that you've learned more about humans and what we're like from observing that relationship over the years?
I don't think I've learned anything about humans.
I was hoping for some wisdom, David. What is fascinating is that, so you mentioned Anna Friel, you've talked about Alan Cumming. There's a lot of famous names in the exhibition.
They're not really famous people to me. I mean, Anna Friel, I've known since she was about 10. She came along with her parents to Chelsea Arts Club. So, you know, we're old pals, really.
But it's almost more, it's not, as you say, it's not about the fame or people being famous. It's about, there's something universal here, isn't there? As you walk around the exhibition, people with their dogs, and as you were saying earlier, it's almost like the Queen and her corgis. There's a universality that we can all recognise.
Yes, I think so. It goes back to that simple Well, love. But, you know, people really love their dogs. Probably more than the rest of their family.
Now, they always say, don't they, never work with children and animals. I'm sure there are some good stories about some particularly naughty dogs.
No, I've never had.
I'm thinking, so Ethan Hawke, another famous name, he's got a dog called Nina, and in the book you describe a battle of wills between you and Nina. Who came out on top, David?
Well, it's hard to say, but it was partly my fault because I didn't want Nina sitting on the floor and Ethan sort of leaning over. I wanted the dog a little bit elevated, so I said, do you think she would sit on this cushion on this chair? And Ethan said, yeah, of course she will. And of course he didn't want to. And but he sort of made her, and you know, she was very resentful. And
so do you think it comes across in the final drawing?
I think it probably does. Yeah. But she's lovely, you know.
Oh, and what about, there's a lovely story as well about a friend of yours called Jean who had dogs called Charlie and Molly. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Jean, yes. She had this dog called Charlie, and it was a really wretched, snappy little dog. Only Jean loved it. And she said she would have these, she was very proper and Upper East Side, and she'd have these parties with drinks and in her little library, and there was an archway through into it. And Charlie would drag this great bear into the middle of the arch and start humping it vigorously. Which she completely ignored. It was, and she said, you know, I hope I die before Charlie, because I couldn't bear the thought of life without him. She even bought him a little set of steps so he could climb up onto the bed, which he never did. Anyway, because he was a little shit, he did die first. And she was utterly devastated. And some friends said after a few weeks, you know, Jean, we know of a dog who needs rescue. You know, needs rescuing. She's been in an abusive sort of home. And Jean said, I'm not ready to. Anyway, they brought Molly along anyway, and Molly just flew onto Jean's lap and sat there, and that was her favourite place, and it was instantaneous bonding.
Oh, instant love.
Instant
love. That's what
love.
we go back to, always with love. Do you, when someone loves their dog so much, have you ever had a moment when they don't like the way you've depicted their dog?
No, the only no. The answer, no. I don't think so. Well, they've never told me. Maybe
anyway.
They have. Maybe.
But there's a funny story, isn't there, about someone called Jim and his dog Teddy, and he was asking you. I think he said, didn't he say something?
He said, yes. Jim Giorgio had this dog called Teddy. What was he? A pit bull? A big dog, anyway. As gentle as a lamb, but. He said, if I get the right drawing of Teddy, I've got the next Mona Lisa on my hands.
No pressure.
No pressure.
And I'm just looking over there, I can see the pug, who is just adorable. Now it's got the best name, Wallace, Duchess of Pugs. So can you tell us a little bit more about Wallace?
Well, she was... I've forgotten his name.
It's in here, isn't it?
So many names.
Let me have a look. The owner. Is it Nikki?
Yes,
yeah,
it is. Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, he used to give parties for all the dogs in the Chelsea Hotel, annual parties on the dog's birthday. So there would be champagne on ice for the dog owners, and doggy treats all over the lobby of the Chelsea Hotel.
I love that. The Duchess of Pug coming down for her doggy treats in the Chelsea Hotel. It's marvellous. And so tell us that. So you had a dog, didn't you, David?
I did. I had a German Shepherd called Blue.
And you've painted Blue.
I did a lot of drawings of Blue. Yeah. They do have, as you'll know, they have their personalities. He had been an abused dog when I got him, but when they learn that nothing's going to happen to them, nothing's going to hurt them, they become so loyal and so dependable.
And loving.
He did learn, he knew how to open the refrigerator. And it's hardly believable. He really liked grapefruit, and I used to have these grapefruit with sugar on top, waiting but he knew how to open it and eat this wretched grapefruit. So I actually did a really rotten thing. I put some lemons in the bowl.
David.
I know.
And what happened to him?
Well, he's have you ever seen a dog with very puckered?
Oh no, poor him.
I feel very mean about even telling you about this.
Poor Blue. So there's lots of works here. So it's called People and Their Dogs Drawn Together. Now, I'm interested because there are some where the dogs are depicted with their humans, and some when they're on their own. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision-making process?
Well, it depends on the owner, really. No, I like them as themselves, their own thing.
Do you mean the dog as themselves?
Yes, I do. So it was just a project I got into doing drawings of dogs. They have, as you know, they have as diverse personalities as we do. They can.
And it's just wonderful actually to see that and to see this. But it was never meant as, was it meant to be a series or a long-term project?
Heaven forbid, no. I mean, the whole idea of doing, I didn't really start out as a series. Series happen, you begin, then you do another one, and it leads to other things.
But you don't do dogs anymore.
I do not.
And people probably, I imagine that people might bring their dogs because everyone imagines that their dog will be the one to tempt you back in, don't they?
True.
But there's nothing that would tempt you back to do the dogs.
No.
So when you were telling us there, you hinted about the life in the Chelsea Hotel, talking about the man, the pug owner who would have annual birthday, would have the birthday parties for all the dogs in the Chelsea Hotel. Can you tell us a little bit about living there? Because you lived there for 20 years, didn't you?
Yes, we went for a year because a gallery had wanted me to have an exhibition in which the paintings were made in New York. So we went there with that in mind to do them. And I rang up the owner. I found the owner's name, Stanley Barr, and I rang him up from England and said, "We're coming over." And he said, "I can't make you any promises over the phone, just I'll see you when you get here." So we arrived with 17 pieces of luggage, no reservation, late at night, and we were put in what they called the snail room, which the motif was snail. It was horrible. But very expensive. And I went to see Stanley in the morning, and Stanley said, "How much do your paintings sell for, David?" And I said, "Well, roughly around about this, when they sell." And he said, "And how many do you paint a year?" So I think this is the way he was gauging how much he could charge me for that. And he took us up to a room which was refurbished, nothing in it, white walls. They were just stapling the curtains to the walls, and when we were actually stapling a central panel up there, and that's where we stayed for
For 20 years?
Well, we moved to another apartment. Eventually, we swapped apartments with Barry Flanagan, the sculptor, who had a roof garden, which we coveted. But he also had very young nephews.
Okay.
And the parapet to this 12-story building was very low, so he was pretty nervous about them going. So we got his apartment, he got ours.
It's extraordinary, really, isn't it? Because the Chelsea Hotel is just iconic now. What was it like living there?
Every day was interesting.
That sounds like a massive understatement.
Yeah, I can't. There were friendships. There were all sorts of things within the building. It was very much an artist's community, and it was interesting to be among other painters.
And again, it reminds me almost of the lack of hierarchy in the dogs with famous people and other friends of yours that you depicted. And the same with the Chelsea Hotel. So you have very famous residents that you would paint, but also you're particularly interested in the doorman or the receptionist.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yes, I did the night telephone operator, because it was like putting the old school. I was a telephone operator once. You put the plugs in. And the night one called Bonnie, and the day one.
And there's something about just, again, it's personality, isn't it, that is attractive to you, but also perhaps the way people dress. Is that something that interests you if you're looking to paint someone?
Well, I think that's true of New York then. People really do strut their stuff in New York. They dress up. And particularly African American, beautiful, they just...
Apparently, I think Caroline, your wife, told me that sometimes if you saw someone walking down the street, you might run after them and ask to paint them. Is that true?
Oh no, Caroline did that for me.
I can imagine.
I was moaning to Caroline when we first got there that I hadn't got any models. Here in New York, I've got to do this in 1 year, and I haven't got any models. And there was this young woman on the other side of the road with this cat tattooed on the side of her arm, dark glasses and short bob black hair. And Caroline said, "There's a model." And she ran across the road it was a very hot day, with Rocky Road ice cream, which was going everywhere, and asked her, and she said, sure, she would sit. So she said, "I'm going to be back here in September."
Amazing. Actually, it's really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about the sitting process? Because you actually like to have your models sit for you for quite a long time, or have a few sittings.
Yeah, I like a lot of sittings. Actually, it's a paradox, really. I don't really like people being there.
In your studio?
No. And yet I need them in the studio.
Tricky.
The model is there, the sitter is there, and one part of me can't wait to get rid of them, and yet I need them there. So my ideal is to get to know someone so well that I don't even need them there. But it's a lot of drawing before it gets to that.
A lot of preparatory drawing.
Oh, huge amount of preparatory. But a lot of drawing before you know a person, if you know what I mean.
Yes. And are you a talker during a sitting?
I'm a listener.
Oh. And how do you get them to open up?
Well, I try to shut them up when I'm drawing their mouth. You don't need to get them to open up. They just do it.
Something about kind of being vulnerable and showing themselves.
You could charge psychotherapist fees, because they tell you everything.
Up to that extent.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. Now, you're sitting in front of your dancers' work. Can you just see it there? This glorious, vivacious, I mean, the energy just pulsates off the sheet, I think. And it's a new acquisition for rugby, which is fantastic. We've talked about the dogs, but dance has been a huge part of your life, a huge interest of yours, hasn't it?
Dance started when I was with Harry at Hull College of Art. And I used to go to the Locarno, and Hull had a lot of dance places and clubs, and I used to make surreptitious. I don't like drawing in public. I just hate people standing behind me. I didn't even like it when I was doing life drawing. I used to put donkey, the donkeys that people sit on to draw. I used to pile them up behind me so the tutor people couldn't get behind me.
And so you would go in Hull to draw people dancing.
Yeah.
You a dancer yourself?
Probably a mediocre but enthusiastic dancer.
The best. And can you tell us about the nightlife in New York, actually? That would have been fascinating.
But there are innumerable clubs. Chelsea was the start of really became a sort of very gay mecca in that time. It was. I arrived there just at the tail end of the AIDS epidemic. My friend John Froud was doctor of infectious diseases at Bellevue Hospital, and he said, "You've got to meet this person." And I met George Osterman, who was a playwright and actor who was dying of AIDS. And I don't know why I got onto this particular subject.
Talking about the nightlife in New York.
Yeah. But he wrote for the Theatre of the Ridiculous. The nightlife itself, that was a wrong turn there with George, but George was very important to my starting off of drawing
New York.
people. Yes.
Starting off drawing people, in a different scene or?
Yeah, I don't want it wasn't like this macabre thing. I wanted to draw people who are suffering, but I'm very interested in people. And it was about the gay scene. Actually, that's what. So, clubs in New York, they had something called Wigstock, which was a parody of Woodstock in New York, where you have no idea of the dress and the things. It's astonishing. And we also went to a Chinese restaurant called Lucky Cheng's, which was, they were all transvestite waitresses, whatever, there. And I did a lot of drawing there and got people back to sit for me. So, I mean, for me, it was all grist to the mill.
And I'm just looking at that piece behind you. How do you capture that? So are you taking photographs or are you doing sketches?
Quite a lot of it now is memory. And you can't usually take photographs in places like that. And they're all fictions.
I see. Okay. So these are fictional people or people you might have seen in a fiction? So it's a fictional...
real people.
Okay.
But the context.
Okay. So these are people that wouldn't have necessarily been dancing together.
No, they might not have been dancing together.
Okay. And then you've put them together. And how do you... So is there a particular dance that you enjoy?
Well, before we went to New York, I decided I was going to do three things before I became 40. I was going to learn to ride a horse. I was going to learn to swim the Australian overarm crawl, and I was going to learn the Argentinian tango. I enrolled at a tango place in Turnham Green.
Oh yeah.
And there was a woman who taught tango. I mean, I was brilliant while she was, holding me up. But None of them took.
So you didn't do any of that? You couldn't?
Yeah, it was the only time I ever rode a horse. It galloped on me, and you know, it started. And you know, still do this.
I can imagine you can do the tango with that hat, David. I can see it.
A little.
A little. So, and also we're surrounded here. So we've talked about the dogs. We're surrounded also by your selection from the rugby collection. And I think it'll be really interesting for us to hear about how you went about that selection. Particularly behind us here is this beautiful work by Claudette Johnson.
Oh, gosh, she's just wonderful. Well, it was a particular joy because I didn't know that it was such a rich collection till I was privileged to rootle around in it and see what they had.
So can you tell us a little bit? So you've placed that, there's this amazing Paula Rego there, next to husband Victor Willing.
Yes.
Can you tell us about what drew you to those works?
Well, just the simple vibrancy of both works. The Rego was the first one I saw, and I can't tell you anything specific about it, except that it's a very powerful painting.
It's so interesting actually to see the collection that Rugby's got. It's incredibly impressive.
It is, isn't it?
And as you say, to have a rootle around in it must have been an absolute joy.
Oh, it's really...
really exciting. Let's think about your work in this context. So there's some incredible modern British artists here. There's Paolozzi, we've got Riley. Thinking about your work in context, and I've never actually seen your work in context of your peers. Are there people that you have a relationship with that you would maybe swap works with or discuss art with?
Yeah, there are that I would, but I've never done it. There are painters that do it, and I don't know why I've never got round to doing it.
Are there particular artists that would be a lodestar to you in terms of who you look to?
Contemporary artists?
Either, or modern British?
Bacon was probably the greatest influence.
That's incredible, because I would never, sort of looking around here, you'd never almost put Bacon. So is it just that kind of that interest in humanity, the intensity of the human experience?
It's a superb composition, and they are placed in a way as accurately as a Renaissance painting. They're astonishing.
And I also think that, I mean, we talked about it briefly at the beginning, that idea about relationships. You learn a lot about humans from their relationships with other people, with their dogs, with their environment. So it's the same interest in human experience, I think, that you have in your work.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are other people other than Bacon, but he was the one at art school that sort of...
And there's also an artist called Edward Burrough. I don't know if you've come across him. And I think, you know, looking at that, you can see that sort of the composition-wise, it reminds me of Burrough, the figures. And he obviously spent a lot of time in New York. He was there in, I think, the 20s in Harlem.
I'd forgotten about Burrough.
Yeah.
He, at my second gallery, the Mercury Gallery, used to specialise in Edward Burrough. And she had a wonderful collection of them. And he was the first time I saw watercolours on the scale that Burrough did them. So that was an inspiration.
I bet actually, because also you've worked in watercolour for so long. I mean, you're doing oils now, but were you ever tempted to do oils earlier on in your career?
I started with oil. I didn't start with watercolour. I always thought watercolour was the inferior medium. I thought, was I wrong? You know.
I know. Well, I mean, just look at that work behind us. How vibrant it is. The colours are extraordinary.
There's something about. I was ill actually. I got an illness which stopped me. You know, a sarcoidosis, which affects your joints, your respiratory system, and I was sort of bedridden for probably about 8 months, something like that.
How old were you then, roughly?
30s. Okay. And when I was getting better, I started watercolours because it was easier to tattoo than linseed oil and turpentine and stuff. and I got hooked on the medium. I got hooked on its capriciousness, you know. It happens so fast. You later, when I'm working on the things bigger than this, you know, it really is a bit of a dance. I have a spray, I have a hairdryer, you know, and because I always work upright, precipitation of paint is a very integral part of it, and controlling that, it's all good.
Sounds wonderful. And I'm also thinking about, there's a real history of English watercolourists, actually. So as you're talking about watercolour being capricious, that's a wonderful word to describe it. But, you know, it goes back centuries, actually, the kind of British love of watercolours. Do you see yourself in that tradition?
Not really, but somebody else might. I don't know where I fit in the scheme of things, if anywhere.
David, and can you tell us a little bit, before we open up for questions, I'm sure lots of people have got lots of questions for you, what are you working on at the moment? Where next with the work?
Well, it has taken a shot. I've returned to painting in oil partly because I missed sniffing turpentine. Just because it's a little bit more gutsy, and the scale it's slightly larger, but and also I'm moving away from direct realism a little. So there are two things that I'm interested in. I started a series which began on some chandeliers I saw in New York about 9 years ago. And I made a little drawing of it at the time, thought that might come in useful sometime. And it sort of bubbled away in the head, and I saw them again, and it still wasn't, it was getting there. And I made some drawings on the plane coming back, and it started as a series. Well, it didn't start as a series, it started as one or two of them and became a series. So I'm doing.
And are people still in the work?
No, people seemed to have left the work. They've left the room.
Yes, they've left the dance. You've not. And just quickly, I just wanted to quickly think about your process. So almost like it sounds like you know how writers have a notebook that they might jot down an idea or something, if they come across an idea for a story or something which prompts them. Do you do that with a sketch?
Oh, all the time.
Do you? So do you have your sketchbook with you, David?
I have one in my pocket.
How amazing. What a treat. David, thank you so much for your time. You're always such a joy to speak to. You've got so many wonderful stories.
Thank you, Joey.
So I think there'll probably be lots of people that might want to ask David some questions, so I'll open it up to you.
Yeah. David, you mentioned the 3 things you wanted to do before you turned 40.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you've got another big birthday coming up. And then 3 goals, personal goals, not the crawl, or and then 3 other things that you'd like to do away from the artwork. If you had to pick, or one, if you had to pick one.
I'd like to paint one really good picture.
Yes.
Hello, David. I note on some of your drawings that you have coloured in specific parts of it. So at what stage, when you were doing your drawing, 2 gentlemen in the back room there, sitting together, and they have their socks coloured in.
Yes.
What point did you get to when you decided to do that?
I'm never sure. And actually, that's a good question. I was doing a drawing of Susan Sarandon and her 2 little furry things. I don't know what they were. And she had a cushion, they call them pillows, with a stag's head on it, which looked absurd. And I thought, I really want that in, but will it ruin the drawing? So I painted a separate one, you know, and stuck it on and saw what it looked like. And so I often do.
I noted from her expression she was going.
Well, the one time before that sofa, that one isn't. I haven't put the colour on that. The dogs had a little spat, and one of them bit the other, and there was blood all over the sofa. The next time it was a new sofa.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have an idea in your head of when a painting's finished, or do you feel it's something that evolves along the way and then at some point you just have to put your paintbrush down?
I think I know when it's finished, but Caroline will tell you that sometimes when it's glazed in a frame, it comes out of the frame.
Yes.
So do you ever have painters block, drawing blocks, where you get to a point where you just don't know where to get started?
No, I don't.
No, we do.
It was very inspiration.
Is it Filippo Lippi wrote a line every day. He didn't mean cocaine, he meant drawing. and I keep that.
So you're in the studio every day?
Not necessarily in the studio, but I do something every day.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
I was just wondering, when you were doing in your studio, you were painting and drawing the dogs and the people, who were the better sitters?
Who are the best sitters?
Yeah.
Oh.
Was it the animals or the humans?
It would depend on the. Mostly the dogs are pretty good. Some of them were good by means of bribes, and some of them were good because they were.
What about the dog that left the little present for you?
Oh, yeah. This is over here. This is. Can I say who it is?
Yes.
Kate Hobhouse is really virtually owns Fortnum & Mason's. They commissioned me to do some paintings for their tea room, and I said I should do a painting of you, Kate. So she came along to sit with her dog called Pickle. Pickle came into the studio, disappeared behind an easel, and promptly left a big turd. and she was mortified. Anyway, she cleaned it up, put it in a little bag, and put it in the bathroom, and sitting went fine. And she left. 10 minutes later, the doorbell goes, and she said, "I'm so sorry, I left the poo here."
Yes.
I'm really interested to see, I didn't even know you had a painting by Joe Tilson in the collection. I've only just recently discovered him, and I want to know, David, why you chose that picture. Did you know him, and would you yourself have wanted to abstract art? Because I don't think you ever have.
But no.
What do you think about it?
I don't really differentiate between abstract and figuration.
That's interesting.
I mean, no, I don't. I mean, obviously there is a difference, but for me it doesn't. They can sit cheek by jowl. Well, they are different, but they still sit on. I mean, that work on is that I've forgotten his name now. He's an old academy. The Hoyland there. Now that's getting on for abstract, isn't it? Well, he was an abstract painter, of course, yeah. But it sits quite well with figuration, I think.
But also some of your more recent work, so the chandelier oils that you were talking about, and also the lift shafts as well. They're quite abstract, actually. So although you might not have any truck with definitions, for those of us looking, it does look as if there is some abstraction in there as well now.
well, that's fine. Yeah, but I mean, yes, that I like people who are dissimilar to I love Bridget Riley. In fact, you may not consider it, but she has been an influence on my work. She would hate to hear that said, but the way in which she evokes movement, not particularly in that one, but in many of the curving lines that she does are extraordinary.
And I suppose as an artist, perhaps definitions can be limiting, can't they?
Yeah. I don't see why we have to be confined.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, yeah, David, we've known each other since we were both at art college together, many, many years ago. And you've always wanted to be an artist. I knew that from the first time. As a career,
And you were always going to be a writer.
yeah, but it took me a long time. I'm just saying, was there any time when, in your 20s or 30s or whatever it is, and you were struggling to, make a living, and people would be saying to you, oh, give it up, I mean, be a teacher or something like that?
I was an arrogant bee, I think I did have this tremendous belief in self, completely misplaced, but it gets you through the first few years, and that's what I mean. I've been a slate roofer, I've delivered typewriters in London, and telephone operator. I've done lots of stuff in order to make, but whatever I've done 8 hours of drawing and painting in the same day.
Yeah. So you didn't ever think of sort of, I can't do this really, and walk away from it?
Well, no, slate roofing never had an enduring appeal to me. Did reach the heights there.
Yes.
Can I ask how you got your big break into the art world?
I got little breaks, and then when I was ill with this thing I was telling you, I'd taken some work to New York the year before in the 70s, and an art dealer had bought about 5 works, which is quite surprising. And as I was getting better from this illness, have I told this story already?
No.
So a phone rang, and it was someone who said, "Hi, my name's Joan Ancrum. I have a gallery in California and in Los Angeles, and I've seen your work, and we love it, and we'd like to give you a show." And I thought that Americans are not known for their patience. So I said, that would be wonderful. When? And she said the spring. Anyway, so I painted this whole thing with this in mind. Went over on Laker Airlines with this portfolio that I'd made, which I had to fight to get in onto. And it sold out while they spread the works on the floor to choose the moulding, gold leaf. Nobody can see anything without gold leaf in Los Angeles. So honestly, Sidney Poitier came up to me and said, "I'm going to have to meet you off the plane next time to buy something." I promise. He didn't.
Sydney.
Empty promises, you know.
Not a man of his
but
word.
that was.
That was it?
It was it.
Wow. We've got time for one more, probably. Yes.
I come from the same neck of the woods, so I'm also a working girl.
Shh, you said you. I'm a whole boy.
And I just wondered, with the eclectic kind of art scene that was in Brighton at that time, and all the kind of violence that was there, what drew you to moving northwards, and what was the call for you to go?
Well, I didn't move northwards. My father decided in 1948 or 9 that it would be a great idea to start up in business in Hull.
How old were you then?
Well, 4 or 5.
Okay, so you were quite young.
Yeah, it was quite early in my career.
Thank you all so much. So David is going to be signing copies of the books. So there's We Think the World of You, the dog books, there's Dancers, and there's also a new book on his watercolours available. And there's also amazing mugs and T-shirts. I'm not sure you're going to sign the T-shirts. Who knows? We'll see. But thank you all so much. And thank you very much to Katie for hosting this great event.
Thank you, Katie.